Hello makers, welcome to 3D Maker Noob. I'm Joe, and today I'm going to give you my official review of the Enervision EV160. Stick around. Welcome back makers. As you can see in front of me, this printer has been busy. These are just some of the prints that I produced with this printer. And it was time for me to finally give you my official review. But before I get to the printer itself, I want to speak a bit about Enervision themselves. Now, Enervision is new to the 3D printing industry. They are currently known for producing high-end lithium batteries, and they have offices around the world in the US, in Korea, China. So they're very well established. They decided to venture in the 3D printing industry, and the EV160 is the first of a very long lineup of 3D printing related machines. They also have 3D scanners coming out, 3D printing pens, and I know that the CEO is also in talks with a German company in order to produce industrial grade metal printing 3D printers. So they're taking this quite seriously. The company prides itself on being the source of energy and vision for the world. So that says quite a lot about a company. Now on to the printer itself. As I said, I've opened this printer about 4 weeks ago during a live stream. The printer itself comes in a very good solid build. It has a full aluminum frame. It has what I could possibly say is the largest lead screw I will ever see on a 3D printer, let alone one this size. It is a 16mm ball bearing lead screw, and to complement that, it has two 12mm linear rods. And all this to carry a build area of 160 by 160 by 160 millimeters. The heat bed itself is a 10mm thick piece of aluminium, so I can assure you that this will not warp in any way, shape or form. It is in a Core XY format. It has a very intuitive and responsive touchscreen. It runs on a 24-volt 32-bit board, can print through SD card and also through USB cable when you tether it to a PC. The user interface itself is actually quite intuitive and very responsive. It has very nice options in terms of when homing, you can actually set the speed at which it homes or the distance at which it would move. When you set the extruder temperature, you can actually switch it on and off after you set the temperature itself. When you want to extrude, you actually set the distance that you want to extrude or the speed that you want to extrude with. You can set the heat bed temperature, the fan speed, the printing speed, and a lot of these little functionalities which make it very convenient for you. In order to print, all you have to do is press on the SD card, choose the file that you want to print, and then just press print. Now the printer itself seems to have the ability to add an additional module to it, whether it's a Wi-Fi, whether it's the secondary extruder. It has a lot of things or sections in the settings menu or tools menu which keep telling you to input a Dion module, which I'm guessing would be that. I'm also assuming, which I'm not sure about, that eventually these modules could be released, and that would actually be a great addition to this little printer. Now it's time to talk about prints. These all came off this printer, and I'd say 95% of these are printed at 100 microns. The reason for that is once I printed the first thing in 100 microns, I saw how absolutely gorgeous things were coming out, and I kept on printing everything from Scan the World at 100 microns on this printer. I've printed in PLA, I've printed in Polysmooth, I've printed some PETG, some Polywood. I've also printed with the Polyalchemy Elixir series, and everything just was coming out beautifully, almost perfect to some extent. Some of them, yes, they're absolutely glorious prints. They came out beautifully. So I'm extremely happy with the print quality of this printer. Now, while the printer states that it comes with a patented anti-clog nozzle, I did try to print with some wood filament, and unfortunately I did actually have a clog when I tried to use one of my wood filaments. I think it happened after about 3 or 4 layers. I tried twice. Granted, I didn't tweak many of the settings, so I could possibly try it once again. But seeing as this thing is printing out beautifully in PLA and PETG, that's mostly what I use it for. So I didn't try any further, which is why I went with polywood, because I know for a fact that polywood looks like wood, but it's not actually wood, and it's done specifically for your nozzles not to get clogged. And it turned out absolutely gorgeous. There are some prints which didn't turn out perfect, and that is because of the supports I used. For example, for the dragon, that requires a lot of support. So much so that I actually beheaded the dragon while trying to take off the support because I used too much, and I had to reattach it with some glue. It also lost a couple of teeth in the process. But other than that, every other model I've printed came out really gorgeous. So I'm extremely happy with the print quality. So my final thoughts on the printer. I actually really like this printer. I was a bit skeptical of the size of the build volume. However, as you can see here, I've had no problems printing a lot of models in a relatively decent size. I love the build quality of this printer. I have moved this printer around from room to room with a lot of ease, and I know that if I take this in the car and take it to schools to show kids, I know that nothing's going to happen to it because of the way it is built. I also love the print quality, especially at 100 microns. It produces some really gorgeous results. So that is a massive plus for the printer. The few things I don't like about this printer are attributed to little things that could easily be fixed. One of them is the power supply. As you've probably seen during my live build, the fuse kept blowing. And the reason for that is that this actually has a voltage switch to choose between 110 to 240. Now, while that would be obviously something normal to look for, this is fully enclosed, and it doesn't say anywhere outside that there has to be a switch change, not even on the instructions. It specifically states on the back that it powers on 110 to 240 volts. After the live stream, I had to unscrew the bottom of the printer, locate the power supply, find a hidden switch, and then it started working. So just pointing that out to the customer would make his life so much easier. The other thing I didn't particularly like is the fact that in order for an SD card to work on this printer, you first have to name it SD, nothing else. And you can't just throw files in there. You have to create a folder named G-code and then throw the files in it. And I know this partly because of the SD card that already came with it, and partly because of the instructions, because the instructions tell you that it has to be named SD, but it doesn't tell you that it has to have a folder named G-code. So once again, the instructions, it could be worked on a little bit. The other problem that there is if you by mistake decide to press on factory reset on this printer, not only does it go back to Chinese, everything goes into Chinese, but all the settings of the printer itself, it will reverse all the movement of the X, Y, and Z axis, so you have to end up recalibrating everything. Now, to go back from Chinese to English, it wasn't that difficult because the instructions actually show you where you can find the language selection. However, I had a few issues trying to get everything to print because everything was out of whack in different directions. Finally, the last thing would be, once again, trivial, and that is the spool holder. It feels a bit cheap, and I believe ideally it would be a bit on top of the printer rather than the back, just because I think it would fit better and it would make it a bit more compact. Now, the price of this printer is $850. It's not really cheap, and it has a lot of competition at that price. So initially I thought to myself that it's going to be difficult justifying the cost of this printer, and to some it won't be justifiable because the build volume might put you off. And at that price you can easily get something at 200 by 200 by 200 build volume. However, I can see where most of the cost of that went, and that is the build quality. The lead screw itself is absolutely overkill, and it's possibly why it makes it print so well. I have a mini CNC in the garage that uses smaller lead screws than that. So I can see why it costs that much. I'm sure that a lot of people will disagree and might not find that worth it. But for the print quality itself and the fact that I can lug this around and not have to worry about something moving, settings, screws coming off, or cable ties, it's a really, really, really great printer for that price. And that is it for me. As always, I want to give out full disclosure. This printer was given to me by the CEO of the company. He specifically said that I will get to keep this printer before I even received it. However, I want to point out that I did pay over 250 euros of import taxes for this printer, which I did not ask from the seller, or which I'm not contesting in any way. It's part of what I do. It's part of having a YouTube channel in the middle of Europe and want to work with US partners. It's fine with me. I'll take that on. But I just want to let you know that this was free, but it wasn't completely free. But other than that, no money has exchanged hands. I have given you my unbiased review of how I think this printer performs and every single thought that I could come up with when it comes to this printer. That is it for me, guys. Thank you very much for watching once again. I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope I didn't ramble on for too much. If I did, please let me know and I'll try to make these reviews a bit shorter. In the meantime, thank you very much. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and as always, happy making, guys.